In the next few minutes, witness the dramatic escalation between Israel and Iran, the secret operations, the global stakes, and the uncertain future that could reshape the world. This is the story of conflict, diplomacy, and survival on the edge. Here's what you need to know about the Israel-Iran conflict, a rivalry that could reshape the world. In 2024, direct attacks shattered decades of shadow war, pushing the region to the brink. Operation Midnight Hammer changed everything. Nuclear sites struck, the world on edge. What happens next could impact us all. Stay tuned for the full story. In the shadows of the Middle East, two nations stand at the edge of war, Israel and Iran, locked in a rivalry that has shaped the fate of an entire region. April 2024. The world holds its breath as Iran launches an unprecedented direct attack on Israeli soil, shattering decades of uneasy silence. Sirens wail, missiles streak across the night sky. The red line has been crossed. In a bold and controversial response, Israel and the United States unleash Operation Midnight Hammer, the target Iran's nuclear heart. Explosions ripple across secret facilities, sending shockwaves through capitals from Washington to Moscow. Conflicting reports swirl. Just how much damage was done? Is the world any safer, or is the region now closer than ever to nuclear catastrophe? As global powers rush to contain the fallout, alliances fracture and old enemies draw new lines in the sand. The risk of all-out war has never been greater. This is the story of ambition, ideology, and survival. A high-stakes contest with consequences that could reshape the world. Stay with us as we unravel the roots, the escalation, and the uncertain future of the Israel-Iran conflict. Thank you for watching Think Global. Stay informed, stay curious, and subscribe for more global insights. Welcome to Think Global. We bring you in-depth analysis and stories that shape our world. Let's dive in. The Israel-Iran conflict is one of the most complex and dangerous rivalries in the modern world. It's a multifaceted struggle with deep historical roots and far-reaching implications for global stability. Understanding this conflict is crucial to navigating the turbulent landscape of the Middle East, casting a long shadow over the Middle East, influencing alliances and fueling instability across the region. The tensions between these two nations have ripple effects that extend far beyond their borders. It's not a simple border dispute or a mere disagreement over territory, but a clash of ideologies, a fundamental difference in worldviews and political systems that shapes their interactions. It's also about regional ambitions, a competition for influence and dominance in a strategically vital part of the world. Both nations seek to shape the future of the Middle East according to their own visions, and deep security fears, driven by mutual distrust and a perception of existential threats. Each side views the other as a major obstacle to its own security and well-being. Decades ago, Israel and Iran were actually strategic partners, cooperating on various fronts and sharing common interests. This alliance, however, was not destined to last. The 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran changed everything, fundamentally altering the political landscape of the region, bringing a regime to power, one with a radically different vision for Iran's role in the world. That made opposition to Israel central to its identity, a core tenet of its revolutionary ideology. This shift turned a former ally into a determined adversary, setting the stage for decades of conflict and confrontation, locking both nations in a shadow war, fought through proxies and covert operations, often far from their own borders. That has only grown more perilous, with each escalation bringing the region closer to a full-blown conflict. Recent events have pushed this rivalry into the open, shattering previous norms and raising the stakes to unprecedented levels. With direct military strikes marking a new, dangerous chapter, signaling a willingness to engage in direct confrontation. We'll trace the conflict's evolution, examining the key events and turning points that have shaped its trajectory. From its origins to the current volatile state, analyzing the factors that have contributed to its persistence and intensification. Focusing on Iran's nuclear ambitions and the use of proxies, two of the most critical and destabilizing aspects of the conflict. The escalation in April 2024, a watershed moment in this long-standing rivalry, when Iran launched its first direct attack on Israel, crossing a red line that had previously been avoided, marked a turning point, signaling a new phase of open hostility and direct confrontation. Operation Midnight Hammer, a response to the April attacks. A U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites, a bold and controversial move aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program, further raised the stakes, pushing the region closer to the brink of war. We'll examine the operation's objectives, the strategic calculations behind it, and the potential consequences, its impact both immediate and long-term on the balance of power in the region, and the global reactions that followed as the international community grapples with the implications of this escalating conflict. The choices made in Jerusalem, the decisions of Israeli leaders, Tehran, the actions of the Iranian regime, and Washington now have global consequences, shaping the future of the Middle East and beyond. The risk of a devastating regional war and a nuclear-armed Iran has never been higher, demanding urgent attention and a concerted effort to de-escalate tensions. Before 1979, the geopolitical dynamics of the Middle East were markedly different. Israel and Iran, despite their differences, were pragmatic partners, finding common ground in a complex regional landscape. This unlikely alliance was largely united by a shared distrust of powerful Arab states, who at the time presented a significant challenge to both nations. Furthermore, both countries shared a strong alliance with the US, which played a crucial role in fostering cooperation and mutual support. Israel, with its advanced military capabilities, provided valuable expertise, while Iran, rich in natural resources, supplied oil, fueling Israel's growing economy. Their cooperation was a key component of Israel's periphery doctrine, a strategic approach that sought to build alliances with non-Arab states to effectively counter potentially hostile neighbors and maintain regional stability. Crucially, intelligence sharing and trade flourished, creating a strong economic partnership that benefited both nations and strengthened their ties. During this period, Iran was seen as a modern, strategically important asset, playing a significant role in the region's balance of power. However, the landscape shifted dramatically with the 1979 Islamic Revolution. This pivotal event fundamentally upended this long-standing relationship, ushering in a new era of hostility and conflict. Ayatollah Khomeini's newly established regime swiftly severed all diplomatic and economic ties, marking a complete break from the past. The revolutionary government lost no time in branding Israel as an illegitimate occupier of Palestinian lands, and symbolically handing over its embassy in Tehran to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Pragmatism was swiftly replaced by open hostility, driven by the powerful forces of revolutionary ideology and religious fervor. For Iran's new leaders, staunchly anti-Western and deeply religious, opposing Israel became not just a political stance, but a fundamental religious and revolutionary duty. This ideological shift fueled support for various anti-Israel groups and movements across the region, and ultimately set the stage for decades of complex and often violent indirect conflict. The shift was absolute, a complete and irreversible transformation. What was once a quiet partnership, built on mutual interests, became a dangerous and deeply entrenched rivalry. The Middle East's strategic landscape was irrevocably transformed, redrawing the lines of power and influence. This dramatic shift set Israel and Iran on a collision course, with far-reaching consequences for the entire region. What began as a pragmatic alliance driven by shared interests and geopolitical realities, now drives one of the world's most enduring and destabilizing conflicts, a rivalry that continues to shape global politics. The seeds of today's multifaceted crisis, with its complex web of alliances and enmities, were sown in that dramatic and consequential reversal of 1979, a turning point that continues to resonate throughout the region and the world. The Israel-Iran conflict is driven by ideology, nuclear ambitions, and a struggle for regional dominance through proxies. Iran's clerical regime sees Israel as an illegitimate outpost, making opposition a core part of its identity and a rallying cry in the Muslim world. For Israel, Iran's revolutionary ideology and nuclear ambitions are existential threats. Israel's fear of a nuclear-armed Iran has fueled decades of covert operations and preemptive strikes. The rivalry is fought through proxies. Iran's axis of resistance includes Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, encircling Israel with hostile forces. Iran funds, arms, and trains these groups to pressure Israel from multiple fronts. Israel counters with airstrikes and covert actions, aiming to disrupt Iran's military presence and weapons transfers. This shadow war allowed both sides to strike without open conflict, but the balance was always fragile. Proxy wars created constant instability, with any miscalculation risking direct confrontation. The region has lived on the edge, with each side testing the other's limits. The stage was set for escalation. For years, Israel and Iran avoided direct clashes, maintaining a delicate balance of power in the Middle East. Instead, they engaged in a shadow war, fighting through proxies like Hezbollah and conducting covert military operations, each side testing the other's resolve without triggering a full-scale conflict. That fragile equilibrium shattered in April 2024, marking a turning point in their long-standing rivalry. It began when a suspected Israeli strike, attributed but not officially claimed, targeted an Iranian consular building in Damascus, Syria, a location considered sovereign territory under international law. The strike resulted in the deaths of several senior Iranian commanders, including high-ranking officials from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Iran, outraged by the attack and the loss of its key personnel, vowed direct retaliation against Israel, a significant departure breaking with its usual proxy strategy and signaling a new level of escalation in the conflict. On April 13, 2024, the world held its breath as Iran launched over 300 missiles, a combination of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and drones at Israel, overwhelming air defenses and creating a complex threat matrix. This marked its first-ever direct assault against Israeli territory, a move that shattered decades of strategic ambiguity. The attack, while substantial in scale, was also symbolic, meant to showcase Iran's military capabilities and its willingness to directly confront Israel. However, the vast majority of the incoming projectiles were intercepted by a coordinated international coalition including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Jordan. As a result, minimal damage was done to Israeli infrastructure, but the long-standing taboo against direct attacks had been irrevocably shattered, opening the door to further escalation. In response, Israel retaliated with a precise strike of its own, targeting a location near Iran's Isfahan nuclear facility, a site of immense strategic importance. This was a clear signal of Israel's ability to reach and strike sensitive targets within Iran, raising the stakes even higher. This tit-for-tat exchange marked a new and exceedingly dangerous phase in the conflict, transforming it into an open military confrontation. The era of the shadow war was definitively over. Both sides had crossed a critical red line, venturing into uncharted territory. Consequently, the risk of a major regional war, drawing in other nations and destabilizing the entire Middle East, soared dramatically. The events of April 2024 served as a stark warning, setting the stage for an even greater and potentially catastrophic escalation of the conflict. The conflict had evolved into a direct standoff, a dangerous game of brinkmanship between two of the Middle East's most powerful and well-equipped militaries. The world watched with growing apprehension as the stakes in this high-stakes conflict rose higher than ever before, threatening to engulf the region in flames. After the 2024 escalation, Iran accelerated its uranium enrichment, prompting urgent action from the US and Israel. On June 22, 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer was launched, a massive joint strike targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. The goal: cripple Iran's nuclear program and set it back by years. Key sites hit included Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan core to Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Over 125 aircraft, including B-2 stealth bombers, delivered 75 precision-guided munitions, including bunker busters. Iran's air defenses were caught off guard. The strikes were swift, and coordinated U.S. officials claimed all targets were hit with precision. The operation marked a dramatic escalation, no longer limited strikes but a full-scale preemptive attack. The aim was not regime change but to eliminate the immediate nuclear threat. Operation Midnight Hammer was a high-stakes gamble to resolve the crisis by force. The world braced for Iran's response. The conflict had reached a new level of danger. In the aftermath of Operation Midnight Hammer, the true extent of the damage was hotly debated. The US and Israel quickly declared success, releasing images of destroyed facilities at Fordow and Natanz. Israeli officials claimed the strikes had buried enriched uranium and rendered the sites unusable. They called it a decisive blow to Iran's nuclear ambitions. However, a leaked US intelligence report offered a more cautious view, questioning whether the deepest bunkers were truly destroyed. This fueled speculation that the operation's success was exaggerated for political reasons. Iran admitted to damage but downplayed its severity, keeping details vague. The reality likely lies between the triumphant claims and the skeptical assessments. Surface facilities were devastated, but the fate of the most fortified underground sites remains uncertain. This ambiguity is critical. It will shape Iran's next moves. If the strike was only partially successful, Iran may rebuild in secret and accelerate its nuclear efforts. The world is left guessing about the true impact. The uncertainty keeps tensions dangerously high. Operation Midnight Hammer sent shockwaves worldwide, dividing global powers. The US and Israel presented a united front, defending the strikes as necessary for global security. Both nations prepared for possible Iranian retaliation, putting their forces on alert. Iran condemned the attack as aggression and vowed revenge, rallying its population but exposing its vulnerabilities. The world waited to see if Iran would respond with direct attacks, proxy violence, or covert operations. Russia and China condemned the strikes, calling for restraint but offering no military support to Iran. This exposed the limits of Iran's alliances with Moscow and Beijing. European nations were cautious, fearing the strikes could trigger a wider war. Leaders urged de-escalation and a return to diplomacy. The conflict highlighted the fragility of global security and the risk of uncontrollable escalation. The world held its breath, hoping diplomacy could contain the crisis. The stakes had never been higher. The 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer reshaped the Middle East. Iran's military suffered heavy losses. Its missile arsenal and air defenses were decimated. The Revolutionary Guard was battered, forcing Tehran to reassess its strategy. Iran's proxy network, the Axis of Resistance, failed to deliver the overwhelming support Tehran hoped for. Proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis acted, but not in full force, revealing their limits. Gulf Arab states, alarmed by the conflict, sought diplomatic solutions and worried about their own security. Iran's economy, already crippled by sanctions, was pushed to the brink by war and infrastructure damage. Domestic unrest grew as economic hardship deepened. Globally, oil prices spiked and shipping was disrupted, underscoring the world's dependence on Middle East stability. The strikes on Iran's nuclear sites created a crossroads: delay Iran's bomb, or push it to pursue nuclear weapons with new urgency. Calls for weaponization grew louder in Tehran. Faith in diplomacy was shattered, making the region more dangerous. The war's consequences will echo for years. After the US brokered ceasefire, the Middle East stands at a crossroads. The future is uncertain, with several scenarios possible. The most dangerous: renewed, large-scale conflict if Iran retaliates, or Israel sees nuclear rebuilding. This could draw in global powers and spark a catastrophic war. Another path is diplomacy, using the shock of war to push for a new agreement limiting Iran's nuclear program. Deep mistrust and political pressures make this difficult but not impossible. A third scenario: a return to the shadow war. Proxies, cyber attacks, and covert strikes. This avoids all-out war but leaves the core conflict unresolved. The most alarming: Iran races for a nuclear bomb, withdrawing from treaties and expelling inspectors. This would provoke further military action and could trigger a regional nuclear arms race. Each path carries immense risks for the region and the world. The next moves by Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington will shape the future. The Israel-Iran conflict has entered a new, dangerous era. The shadow war is over. Direct confrontation is now reality. The US-brokered ceasefire is fragile, and the drivers of conflict remain. Iran is battered but defiant, its regime hardened by war. The key question: will Tehran seek diplomacy, or double down on nuclear ambitions? For Israel and the US, the strikes were a tactical success but a strategic gamble. The operation may have bought time, but not solved the underlying problem. It could even push Iran closer to building a bomb. The challenge is to turn military leverage into lasting peace, a daunting task. The world watches anxiously as the risk of catastrophic conflict remains high. The shadow of war still looms and the brink is closer than ever. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most critical flashpoints of our time. At Think Global, our mission is to bring you clear, insightful analysis on the world's most pressing issues. If you found this video informative, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications for more in-depth explorations of global events. Your engagement helps us continue to deliver content that matters. Until next time, stay informed and think global.